Hey guys, it's Cicely Everson here, owner of Tao Holistics, herbal and functional medicine practice. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about hormones, how hormones impact your health, both positively and negatively, and how we can bring them into balance. So, when we're talking about hormones, this involves both men and women. A lot of times we say or we relate hormonal health to women, but we all make hormones, right? We just make them in different amounts, which is what separates one thing that creates the gender difference in terms of what makes a female, what makes a male. That does depend on the hormonal makeup, the chemical makeup, okay? And so when we look at hormones like estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, everyone's heard of, both men and women make these hormones just in different proportions. And so I'm going to kind of skim through those, which are the sex hormones, but I want to talk mainly about adrenal health and thyroid health, because I found in my practice that almost every single person is affected by an imbalance in one of these areas. And a lot of it has to do with the lifestyles that we lead today. You know, we're busy, we don't eat properly. Even if we're eating healthy foods, we probably don't eat at the right times of the day or enough, you know. And so a lot of that can impact how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And when you repeat that habit over and over and over again, day in and day out, especially if you have a very consistent work schedule, then that can pose a problem. And so just to kind of quickly give you an overview, and I want to connect hormones to conditions too, to health problems, because a lot of problems that people are dealing with, you don't have to put up with them. Like, you can correct. I am a firm believer that the body has its own innate healing process that can correct any chronic condition. Now, of course, before the body manifests any physical symptoms, you have an energetic body, your spiritual body. These things impact your health. So if you've already got inflammation or pain, then there could be something on an emotional or energetic level or spiritual level that has sort of triggered the release of something that's creating this manifestation. So I want to make that very clear, because no one's really teaching us to be, I shouldn't say no one, but we're not regularly taught to be responsible for our emotions. We aren't. And there are some things that we may not be aware of, like past lives and things that happened in another life that we might not have a clue about. And so perhaps working with an energy worker or with a shaman and really helping to uncover some of those things can really set people free. I've seen it happen. It's nothing out of the ordinary. And just a note about shamanic practitioners or shamans, indigenous groups, each had their own, they had their medicine woman or their medicine man, which was basically just a healer of the group, one who himself or herself went through, traditionally speaking, usually they went through, a process of maybe even near death or an illness, were brought back from that and really just devoted the rest of their lives to healing. They received messages from God or source or spirit, whatever you like to call the creator, and they felt like their divine purpose was to be here and to heal people. And so working with a shaman can really yield amazing benefits, because it's a shaman is one who works with the spirit world on behalf of another person. So for me, if I'm working with a client who maybe wants to do past life or regression, or maybe they just want a little more insight, I connect them with spirit, with the spirit world on behalf of that client, and then equip them with tools that they can use at home to do that same thing in a certain way. So for lack of, going into depth about it, that is what a shaman does. All shamans may practice differently, but working with a shaman can be really, really grounding and beneficial and freeing. So I highly recommend that. Energy healing like Reiki, laying on of hands, and then any kind of physical manipulation, even massage therapy, can really move lymph and toxins through the tissues and really start that detoxification process. I can't even get into that on this video, but detoxification is it's not just limited to physical detoxing, right? Like, I'm gonna take this herb, I'm gonna do this colon cleanse, but what about your spiritual needs? What about spiritual detoxification, detoxing negative and toxic emotions? These are just as important, if not even more important than the physical part, because if you don't get those right, you're just going to relapse, right? So, and talking about physical health and spiritual health, I mean, healing one can lead to healing in the other area, and they're fluid, they can go back and forth. It's not like rigid or set. So anyway, balancing the hormones is important because you can correct chronic conditions. If you suffer from, I'm just literally throwing out a few examples. If you suffer from migraines, breast cancer or ovarian cancer, testicular cancer, if you suffer from, from hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism or Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid, or Crohn's colitis or irritable bowel syndrome. I mean, you name it, whatever the label is, many of these conditions are related to your hormonal makeup. And as we age, the hormones decline. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Even if you feel okay and you feel what you consider to be normal, you feel generally happy, that's great. First of all, that's really great. But from the moment that we turn about 30 to 35, somewhere in that window, our hormones start to decline. And I mean, I hate to say it, but with the health of our communities these days, with the food, the air, the water supply, I wouldn't be surprised if they started, declining some prior to that time, just because our bodies are under a lot of stress. So we each carry our own type of body burden, toxic body burden, depending on our environment and what we've been around. This is not like the spiritual toxins. I'm talking more about the physical ones now. So depending on where you live, if you live in an urban environment versus living out in the country, the toxins you're around are going to be different. They're going to impact your body in a certain way. If you were a heavy dairy drinker or consumed dairy a lot as a child, the toxins that are in your body, the inflammation, that is going to eventually, your body has a threshold, and eventually your body's going to act out and say, wait a minute, I don't want this anymore, or at least it's going to give you those signs. You might not always listen to them, but it might give you the indigestion, the stomach cramps, the rashes, but you may not put two and two together, or maybe you do and you're just a little resistant. So our bodies are constantly talking to us, and toxins from all different types of toxins, they speak to us, and our bodies are communicating. So hormones are chemical messengers that help our body communicate. And so just like our brain tells us what to do, our brain is made up of neurotransmitters. These are hormones in the brain. And when those hormones become out of balance, we can experience things like mental health, imbalances. You can experience anxiety, depression, addictive behaviors, hyperactivity, Parkinson's disease, so many different things that are connected to your hormones. So for example, like migraines, what I have found in my practice is that most people with migraines are usually deficient in iodine, which is understandable because if you live in North America, you probably don't eat seaweed every day. And every single cell in our body requires it. Our thyroid takes up the most, and then followed by the breast and the ovaries, but every single cell requires it. So even if you're a man, you need iodine. But what I found in my practice is that people with migraines have drastically improved by taking iodine supplements or herbs containing iodine, as well as progesterone. Progesterone is one of the sex hormones that the body produces. And again, remember, as we get older, those hormones decline. So that's just to give you an example. If someone has breast cancer, or if you want to prevent breast cancer, a very good tool would be to take progesterone. And I'm going to go into the forms and the types and all that stuff, because there are differences between traditional hormone replacement therapy and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. So and then there's like an in-between, a middle ground with herbs that produce some of these hormones. And so I'll kind of explain that. But in terms of breast cancer, the body is lacking progesterone. Let's say breast cancer or even ovarian cancer or fibroids or cysts on the ovary. The body is lacking progesterone. Progesterone is a protective hormone. And so that is one that you definitely want to make sure that you are getting enough of in your body, especially if you've been faced with an illness like that. For breast cancer or ovarian, I would also recommend vitamin D. That is important. Vitamin D is actually really not a vitamin. It functions like a hormone in the body. And so that is going to be very beneficial to the immune system, but also very protective. So that is another one. And then iodine, again, comes into play with the cancers as well. So just an idea of how the hormones play a role. When we look at estrogen, when we look at estrogen in women, estrogen is like the family, right? Estrogen is the umbrella of, there are 3 different types of estrogen. The first one is estrone, the second one is estradiol, and the third one is estriol. And I think I have them in the right order. But so they make up estrogen. And there are some, like the estrone, that is not really considered a beneficial type of hormone. This is one that you do not want to have an abundance of because it can lead to cancer development and overgrowth of the cells. But the other 2, estradiol and estriol, have shown through research to be protective of the cells, especially when it comes to cancer. So it's important to know these things because we're faced with a lot of fake estrogens from the environment, chemicals and toxins. And what happens is they mimic the molecular structure and they trick our body into thinking that they're estrogen, but they're not. And so our body is like, wait, I don't know what to do with this. This looks like a foreign invader, but I'm not sure. And so then, you can have a host of problems that way as well. And detoxification is clearly important because it helps to clear a lot of that junk out of the body so the body can start to work properly again. So that's just a little insight there. But I did want to focus on adrenals and thyroid, like I said. So let me quickly go through those, and then I'll talk about how the different types of hormonal supplements, the differences between synthetic versus natural, and we'll get into that. So your adrenal glands, you have 2. They sit on the top of each of your kidneys, and they basically are like the stress response center of your body. So if you've ever been like in a near car accident, maybe you almost rear-ended the person in front of you, that scenario triggered your body into recognizing it as a stress, right? And you went into fight or flight. You were like, your adrenaline started pumping, cortisol started flowing. And if you didn't hit the person, then in an hour or 2, your body settles down. You kind of get back to normal. You might replay it in your head a few times, but that good old mind, right? But eventually you calm down, you're settled, it's done. Another example of how the adrenals can impact you is if you're in a more stressful, chronic situation, like maybe a job that you don't like, or maybe it's someone at your job, like a boss or someone that you don't like, or you guys bump heads. If you go to work every day and you see this person every day, this is an example of a repeated or a chronic stressor. Your body, again, identifies this as a stress. It doesn't care if it's what you would consider to be small or what you would consider to be, large. A stress is a stress to the body. And so your adrenal glands, again, pump out the cortisol, the adrenaline. But the problem is that, and I hope you can see the difference here, the near car accident example happened once. The I don't like my boss or the chronic stress at work situation happens every single day. And so if the body is pumping out these hormones after each stressor, even if it's your mind preparing for the stress, like, oh, I'm pulling into work, I'm clocking into work, I'm walking past my boss, I'm heading into this meeting, there might be a lot of demands on you at work or something like that. But anyway, when you feel that repeated sense of stress, your adrenal glands, not only did they pump out the hormones once, like they did in that near car accident, but now they're doing it again and again and again. And that is unhealthy because then your hormones become out of balance. And when your adrenal glands are out of balance, excuse me, you're going to invite chronic conditions, anxiety, depression, maybe diagnosed, maybe not, irritability. You're going to have a host of symptoms, and then you also might have problems losing weight. And that is a nice segue into the thyroid. But before I talk about that, let me quickly say, with the adrenal glands, your sacral chakra, which is your second chakra, and I do have a mini meditation on this chakra, is correlated to your adrenal glands. So meditating on the area below your navel, that is your sacral chakra, meditating on that area and just, focusing your attention to bring healing to that part of your body, which is represented by the color yellow, can help you bring balance to this area. But it's like an all hands on deck approach, right? So I'm not saying you meditate, every day on this area and you fix all your problems and you like your boss again. It doesn't always work that way, but it's just about knowing little tools, little things that can help to put all these pieces of the puzzle together. So, that was a note about the adrenal glands. And when it comes to food, lifestyle changes that you can make, it's the usual suspects: the dairy, the wheat, the sugar, the caffeine. These things really can do a number on the adrenal glands and impact their function, which is going to decrease your body's ability to really get rid of the stress, right? To effectively deal with the stress. And so by improving your diet, taking out dairy, even if you do this experimentally, I know nobody wants to take out cheese, but even if you do it experimentally and you say, I'm going to go 2 weeks, I'm going to go 3 weeks, whatever you can handle, start there. Start with one food if you want, or if you're, hardcore, do all four, but have the substitutes in place before you go hardcore, or it's not going to work. And I can help with that too. So if you want to know about substitutions for dairy, wheat, sugar, and caffeine, I'm here. But by making those subtle changes, your body will instantly start to respond and you will feel better. And you can start to reset the adrenal glands. Now, I use herbs and plant medicine all day, not all day, but every single day. And I do take them a few times throughout the day, but it's become a joy for me. It's not a chore. It's not like I'm swallowing 20 pills of vitamins. It's not like that at all. I use a lot of liquid herbs because you can combine several herbs into one formula. And I use adrenal herbs almost on a daily basis. They help you to feel grounded. They help your body emotionally respond to stress in a positive way. And they just help to change your outlook on situations and things that you worried about one day, in a month from now, you may be like, I couldn't even care less. So that's the whole point of supporting the adrenal glands, is to improve the way your body responds to stressors. And we're all going to be faced with them. So it's important to have these tools in your medicine bag, as I like to call it. So segueing into the thyroid. This is a really complex one. I'm going to have to kind of gloss over it. But the thyroid, anybody can have an imbalance in the thyroid. The thyroid sits in the middle of your neck. Okay, it's that gland that sits right there. And this governs your metabolism. It does work in tandem with the adrenal gland. So when I talk about one, I almost always talk about the other. And so if you have problems with weight, or maybe not necessarily gaining a lot of weight, but if you have problems losing it, that could be a problem that could be related to the thyroid. And if you have a problem gaining weight, that could also be associated with the thyroid. So there are a few different conditions that if somebody had a problem with their thyroid and they were to have it medically diagnosed, you may have heard of hypothyroidism. That's when the thyroid is not functioning up to par. It's underactive. Hyper means it's too active. It's working too much. And then you have your autoimmune components of thyroid disease, which could be like Hashimoto's. This is an autoimmune aspect to thyroid imbalance. And this is what 95% of people who have an underactive thyroid actually have Hashimoto's, even if they haven't been diagnosed. And that's in the papers, that's in the research. And it's unfortunate that a lot of doctors aren't equipped with that knowledge, or they're not sharing it. I'm not sure, but I would probably say they're just not equipped with it. But most hypothyroid cases are actually Hashimoto's, which means if there's an autoimmune component at play, you've got to get your immune system in control before anything changes. That leads us back to diet again, because the majority of your immune system lives in your gut. So by targeting your gut, those foods that you're eating, And then other methods too, which you can ask me about separately as far as cleaning out the gut. All of those are going to impact your adrenals, impact your thyroid, impact your immune system. What you're eating is already impacting you. It's just that it may not be impacting you positively. So all you have to do is know what to replace those things with, those habits, foods, those daily rituals and things that we have, and replace it to make them work for us instead of against us. So another autoimmune component to the thyroid would be Graves' disease, when the thyroid is hyperactive. But oftentimes what I've seen is that if a client has Hashimoto's, they tend to fluctuate. Their hormone levels in their thyroid fluctuate. So in 1 month, you could be exhibiting hypothyroid symptoms where it's underactive. And then in a couple of months, you could be hyperactive. So you can kind of have like this thyroid storm effect where it's just kind of really out of whack. And so again, those same foods that are helpful for the adrenal glands and for the immune system are helpful for the thyroid, and really focusing on whole, fresh foods. And then again, some specific herbs and supplements that will be super important and critical to healing the thyroid. But your thyroid is related to your throat chakra. So if you have an imbalance in this area, then I would go as far as to say that you may have an issue with self-expression. Maybe you don't voice your opinion. Maybe you feel like you can't voice your opinion, or maybe you voice your opinion and you're always shot down. Maybe you're thinking about something that you really want to do, but you haven't been able to express yourself. That's like torture. I've been there. That's torture. And so we want to get to a place where we can express ourselves, even if it starts out as journaling. Journal that sucker, like write out how you're feeling no matter what it looks like. You don't have to show it to anybody. Write it out, get it on paper, and be honest and truthful with yourself about your circumstances, and just start slowly expressing yourself. And so with an imbalance in the thyroid, people tend to either be very quiet, or they tend to be like over talkers and talking a lot and always trying to get their message out. So, it can go one way or the other. But anyway, hormones are very important when it comes to the thyroid. A lot of clients will come to me with their lab work, their blood work, and they'll say, oh, my doctor said my thyroid's fine. And I'm looking at it like, nope, it's not. Or the doctors will only test like TSH, which is not made in the thyroid. It's actually made in the pituitary gland in the head, and it signals the thyroid to make its hormones, its thyroid hormones. And so that's not enough. We want to look at the hormones that the thyroid is making directly. If you are on a thyroid medication, let's say you have hypothyroidism, you may be taking Synthroid or levothyroxine, and this gives your thyroid, which is called the hormone called T4. That is one of the hormones that the thyroid makes. The problem is that T4 is not the active thyroid hormone. So when you take T4, your body, or when your thyroid produces T4, your body has to then convert it from T4 to T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. This is where we get our benefits from this hormone in relation to our thyroid. And much of that conversion takes place in your liver and then in your kidneys. And so if you've never really done a liver cleanse, if you don't do one every year, if you eat a traditional standard American diet, then you could probably use some liver cleansing and some restoration of the thyroid gland. And so the problem with taking like Synthroid or levothyroxine is that you're then relying on the client, on the person's body to convert it. What if it doesn't convert well because the liver is congested? Then you're not really going to feel much better on this medication. So there are definitely methods that we have in place that I use here at Tao Holistics to really help restore thyroid function, whether you're hypo or hyper or have Hashimoto's, which I address most of them as such because most of the cases are. For most people, having a problem with the thyroid is not even the primary issue. It's usually autoimmune or stemming from the pituitary gland, where the balance is off and it's signaling or not signaling the thyroid to make adequate hormone. So it really just depends. But that was just a little bit of information on the hormones that our bodies make. Our bodies make lots more than what we talked about. We talked about T4, T3, these are the thyroid hormones. We talked about TSH, which is a hormone that the pituitary gland makes. We talked about some of the adrenal hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And then we also talked about progesterone and estrogen. Testosterone, we didn't cover too much, but testosterone is needed by both men and women. If you're a woman and you're having a decline in your sexual function or sexual desire, and that is starting to dwindle, there are other hormones as well, but testosterone is definitely needed by both genders in order to round out the activity, the function of our reproductive system and sexual health, those organs down there. So that's very, very important. So I think I covered most of what I planned to, even though I didn't really have a in-depth plan, but I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how hormones do control the way our bodies function. And when it comes to anxiety and depression, there's one hormone that I saved for last because it's not made where you probably think it is, and that is serotonin. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter known as like the happy hormone, whereas dopamine is like the pleasure hormone. When you get pleasure from doing something, the dopamine is what is behind that. But when it comes to serotonin, the happy hormone that has to do with your mood and how you feel, almost all of your serotonin is made in your gut, like 90% And so it's not even made in the brain, most of it. And so if you feel depressed, if you feel sad, apathetic, just for no reason, and you feel like everything around you is fine, you should be feeling okay. Or maybe everything around you is not fine. But regardless, if you're feeling unhappy, you're feeling down, whether you've been diagnosed with depression or not, you definitely want to start with your gut. Healing the gut is so essential to overall health. I just can't stress it enough. So just imagine if you've never given attention to your gut, or if you don't regularly give attention to your gut health. And by giving attention to your gut health, I mean taking really good quality probiotics to clear out the upper intestines, the small intestines, making sure that you've got a really good amount of good bacteria in there. If you're not colon cleansing and keeping your colon and your lower bowels clean, if you're not doing those things, it becomes a breeding ground for dis-ease in the body. And if those things are not addressed, then the serotonin levels are not being adequately produced. There's tons of other stuff that's made in the gut, like your B vitamins and stuff like that, but the serotonin is mostly made there. So if you don't feel happy, if you just feel blah, like you should feel better than you feel, start with your gut and watch your serotonin levels improve. It does take time. Be gracious with yourself, and be patient. But it does take time. But that's why I'm here, to help give you a plan, because it can feel overwhelming. So look for my other video that talks about a few ways that I'm helping people virtually. I do see people a couple days a week in person, but I do have a few new services, a few things up my sleeve that are very helpful, that can help you establish a daily ritual, which would be like a daily health practice. Some people just feel scattered, and they're like, there's too much information out there. It's information overload. I just need for you to tell me what to do. Like, somebody tell me what I should be doing and I'll do it. So there's that sort of a service. And there are other things as well. I can also create a custom health plan for you. So if you want to know what herbs and supplements and foods that you should be consuming daily, then let's talk. So you guys can reach out to me via email at hello@tauholistics.com. You can hit me up on social media. I'm not the best. I'm not always on Facebook and Instagram checking my DMs and my messenger. So email me first. And or if you send me a message through social media, email me and let me know that you did. That way I don't miss your message. And I can't wait to help you. I'm here for you. If you guys have questions or feedback, please, you know the drill. Let me know. I hope that you are well and healthy. And thank you for tuning in. Take care. Bye.